Hello, this is Jim Katsoulis, and today I want to talk about habits. Habits are so important because they literally control our bodies and our health. And the important thing is that they do it on autopilot. Literally, on autopilot, our habits can bring us to the exact body we want or to the exact body we don't want. So I want to give you a basic understanding of habits in a slightly different way. Let's understand how habits operate to begin with, and then we'll go into how to change them up in a more effective way than maybe you've done in the past. Now, a habit is basically just an unconscious behavioral pattern, okay? Now, it's a pattern that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And once it's completed, we feel okay. Now, let me give you an example of a behavior pattern that wouldn't be completed and how it feels weird. If you could imagine being in a business setting and someone, a boss or some coworker, new coworker comes up to meet you and they put their hand out to you. They outstretch their hand to you. Now imagine trying to keep your hand down and not meeting their hand. Notice how that would feel really weird, right? You might even notice it kind of upsets your stomach a little bit, or your chest gets a little tight. There's a feeling of something's not quite right. Let me give you another example. If you look at this picture here, and if you're from a place that drives on the right-hand side of the road, looking at this picture, something doesn't quite feel right, okay? So I want you to recognize that feeling, because that's the feeling that most people have when they attempt to make changes in their habits in their life. So let's take a common example that I work with all the time. Snacking on the sofa. Now, if we think about this, usually what people do is they will say, okay, that's it, I have to stop snacking on the sofa, I have to stop eating at night. Now, there's two problems with this. The first one is real basic. Our unconscious minds do not understand negatives. Let me give you an example. Don't think of what I'm about to tell you. Do not think of a banana. Don't think of a banana. Stop thinking of a banana. Okay, what happens? As soon as I say that, you instantly have to think of a banana. Okay? Now, the other reason that it doesn't work to say, that's it, I'm not going to do that, is it creates a void. Just a blackness. Say, okay, well, every night for the past 10 years I've eaten on the sofa, and now I'm just going to stop. But now you start to notice there's a feeling of that discomfort, kind of like if you didn't meet that person's hand. If you look at that picture and notice that they're driving on the other side of the road, something doesn't quite feel right. So something feels off within ourselves. There's an imbalance. Now, that imbalance is very important because that's what drives a lot of our behavior. We don't have to think about a lot of the things that we do throughout the day. We can just basically know by the way that we feel when everything feels fine. Everything's going according to plan. But the problem we make a lot of times is once we want to change something, we say, okay, that's it, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it creates kind of a vacuum in our mind. Well, what am I going to do? So we have all the great intention in the world, we get to that moment, we sit on the sofa, and all of a sudden, we start to feel like something's not quite right. Okay? So let me give you a way to make this easier. So when you want to make a change in your habits, it's not enough just to say what you don't want, but let's begin to transform it into what you do want so that your mind can have a complete loop. So that rather than saying, I don't want this, instead you can transform it into, at night when I sit on the sofa and I start to feel hungry, I'll eat a piece of fruit. Okay? And so now you have a complete loop, and I'll have that fruit and I'll enjoy it. Or when I get hungry, I'll have a glass of water. So it's a complete loop. You're not just taking things out and kind of feeling uncomfortable, but you add a complete loop to it. Now, again, it may not feel quite right because it's different than what you've been doing, but it's a much easier way to create the change, and it feels more comfortable. Now, you'll still use willpower, and you'll still have to continue doing it for a little while until it feels as natural as the previous habit, but you're going to notice that it's a much more comfortable transition into new behaviors. And now that you've got that complete cycle and circle in your mind of behaviors, now you can just focus on repeating it long enough so that if you don't drink the water, if you don't eat the fruit when you're hungry at night, then that will feel weird. And then that's when you've got it licked, because now it's on autopilot where you have to have those behaviors. You have to drink that water, you have to have that fruit, or it doesn't feel quite right. And that's when your body begins to change automatically. Have a great day, and remember, nothing tastes as good as thin feels.